So we'll start with our usual prayer for student and teacher. By now everybody knows this, so you can join in. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Punaktu Saha Viryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditam Astoma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. May that one protect us both. May that one nourish us both in terms of our studies. May we work together with great energy. May our study be illumined. May we not unnecessarily cavil with each other. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. We have one devotee who's asked that we study Raja Yoga together, and I suggested that maybe every Tuesday we make a series on Raja Yoga, but I won't call it Raja Yoga. I rather call it by some other title, and the title I chose this evening is Lessons We Can Learn from a Mountain or Mountains. There was a famous episode in the Bhagavatam, sometimes called the Avaduta Gita. There the Avaduta, Dattatreya, has not one but 24 gurus, not all of them human. And among them would be the earth, the wind, the sky, water, fire, moon, sun, even some animals like a python or a snake, spider, wasp, and the honeybee. And the ocean also is mentioned, but there's no mention of mountains. So we can fill the gap by seeing what can we learn from mountains. Toward the end of this month, I'll be taking a journey for the first time to the Alps. It was the Alps that inspired Swami Vivekananda. He saw them in the same way that he saw and experienced the Himalayas. What was it that captured his spirit when he looked at mountains of that type? Of course, mountains are various. They don't have to be snow-capped. In Africa, there's Mount Kilimanjaro, which is a kind of like a donut. It's a kind of volcanic mountain. And the snow is there on the top, even in the heart of Africa. So before you and I were born, and in the history of mankind looked out on mountains and got inspired. Not only because of their beauty, but also because of their awesomeness, how tremendously high these mountains were. And there's a thrill about standing or sitting on the top of the mountain and surveying a whole scene. We like to think that the rishis meditated among the Himalayas and other places, among the mountains, and there naturally you can get into a meditative mood. When I give a meditation workshop, sometimes for beginners, after a hard day's work or something like that, or difficulties, you come home, you don't feel like meditating. So many things are there in the mind, cluttered from the day's activities. And so we require some mood cultivators. It might be playing a little piece of music, or reading a passage from scripture, or listening to a talk, as is the wont these days on YouTube. There are many different ways, but certainly everybody requires a serene atmosphere, some special corner of your house that has a special vibration. And there you can sit and you can imagine. One thing that we have is imagination, and our creative imagination very often has to be cultivated. I think it was Bertrand Russell who said that the whole aim seems to be of modern education to completely destroy our creativity. And when we look at the left and right hemispheres of the brain, we can see that if the left brain, the non-creative side, is in control, we're in trouble. It is the right brain, the creative brain, the imagination that has to be active. It's a better manager. The other is a disaster. The whole of spiritual life relies on our capacity to vividly imagine a scene and recall a feeling, and it comes from our memories. So what inspired these rishis is because the very opposite of busy, busy, busy life is to be found amongst the mountains. As soon as you look at the mountains, serenity descends, peace descends. And we are living in a world, if we take the news seriously, BBC and all that seriously, we will not find a serene or peaceful world. It will all be disruption. And we'll absorb that, thinking that this world is a permanent place, a permanent habitat, not understanding that in 100 years none of us will be here. In 1,000 years, probably where you're living, will all be broken down and replaced. These are not major periods in history. These are very small periods. There was somebody online who asked me recently by text, how do I overcome fear of death? Well, fear of death is the primary fear. From that, everything else comes because we don't like self-annihilation. We like to be perpetuated. One thing we can learn from a mountain, it never moves. Seasons come and go, and the mountain may be more snow-laden or less. Climates are there, differences in foliage are there. The sky around it can change. People who are expert in studying Mount Everest will tell you, don't rely on today's weather forecast. The whole thing can change in a moment. A glacier can fall. It can destroy many people. An avalanche can destroy many, many people. How many people have died on Mount Everest, and yet people still are driven toward climbing it? So, we can learn serenity. We can learn to be stable. And the stable element in us is what the yogis call Purusha. And since I want to link this with Patanjali Yoga Sutras and Swami Vivekananda's Raja Yoga, I may as well tell you that the last chapter, the conclusive chapter of Patanjali Yoga Sutras is to do with Kaivalya, separation, isolation, dissociation, a realization of one's true nature distinct from everything else around. Something that is unmoving when everything else is moving. So that the goal of life is to discover this, to be something like a serene mountain that doesn't move and doesn't change. Of course, historically it will move, it will change. Historically it has moved, it has changed. The very reason why it's there, the upheaval in the earth's crust, creating vast, vast miles upon miles of ridges of mountains. For our purposes, the mountain is solid. So the mountain gives us a sense of serenity, a sense of peace. As soon as you look at it, it has this effect. And at any moment in time, those who have been to the mountains or even seen videos in this day, a day of modern technology, we can easily study Mount Everest. We can see a picture from above Mount Everest and fly over it today. When it was first climbed, it was an amazing event in the 1950s. Edmund Hillary and his Sherpa, they went up there, and it was world news. Nobody else had conquered this vast mountain. Now people do it, and they do it sometimes without oxygen even. Then if we want strength, we can recall the image of a mountain easily. It is immobile, it is strong, it doesn't change, it is solid. It represents to us this strength because it is the earth in upheaval. Or Avadutta made one of his teachers the earth. The mountains, of course, are a product of that earth, upheaval of the earth, solidity. And it reminds us then of the combination of elements in every scene that we have. We looked out on a scene the other day. Water was there, sky was there, the earth was there, space was there, virtually wind was there. Every element you could think of was there, because the elements that we view on this earth are gross combinations of subtle waves beneath subtle forces that manifest. And we have to view these subtle forces as invisible waves of divine grace flowing. And as soon as we catch them, as soon as we realize them, we have our freedom. The Ashtavakra Gita, I often quote, it says very clearly, as soon as we understand these subtle forces, we are free. As soon as we understand the nature of nature itself, we are free. And so Patanjali Yoga Sutras is constructed in a very practical, progressive way. And if we take this Kaivalya as something like a mountain, that is our own nature, where we can stand on the top and command the entire world. We can be the mountain. We can be peaceful. We can be serene. So the first chapter, Patanjali Yoga Sutras, as I mentioned during the study with the devotee, is dedicated to what is yoga. One of the most misunderstood passages is the second verse, second stanza, or the second sutra. Sutra is a thread, maybe one word or a few words, but nothing put comprehensively. And the first sutra is designed to tell us that there's a presentation of a subject matter. Most sutra literature begins off with this atha, now. Now begins. Now meaning this presentation of the subject had happened previously before, no doubt, but this is somehow a different presentation, maybe a more elucidated presentation, maybe a more modern, up-to-date presentation. And so yoga is defined. So that first chapter tells us about yoga. Yoga is defined as concentration, and the commentators will tell us how this was derived. It was derived from two roots, yuj and yujir, to join and concentrate. That means to join your attention to the object. So, atha. Atha is the first thing. Atha, yoga, anusasanam. Now yoga is explained. That is concentration. Concentration is explained. Supposing you view the mountain, it is not only the mountain that you're viewing. The attention may wander here and there, but a mountain can be so prominent that the attention can automatically go there. And then it may wander a little. It may notice there's blue sky beyond. It may notice that there is flora and fauna and forestry ahead. It may notice the different shapes, if there's more than one mountain, the different shapes of the mountains. And we could make a mistake. This mistake is called Maya. We could make a mistake. We could think, if we were a child, there is one solid sky carved up into shapes. A mature mind says, no, the sky isn't carved. It is the mountain that is there, and it is in front, in terms of our vision, in front of the sky. And then the most misunderstood stanza of all, Yoga Chitta Vritti Nirodha, is the second stanza. And this tells us, so first stanza tells us about the importance of concentration and presenting a whole subject, a whole science. And the second is that it is restraining. This concentration, this yoga, is restraining the mind stuff, chitta, from taking various forms called vrittis. And then there's a vast commentary lasting several pages in Swami Vivekananda's Raja Yoga commentary on Patanjali Yoga Sutras, which is derived from other commentators such as Vyas, and Vyas has a commentator, Vachaspati. Vachaspati's glass accompanies it. This is what is meant. So why is a vast commentary necessary? It's necessary because you can make a mistake if you do not know the importance of the statement. You can think and misunderstand it as, oh, the practice of yoga is to keep the mind blank. So many people have asked me or told me, I cannot meditate. Why? I cannot keep my mind blank. I cannot empty my mind. Who told you to empty your mind? Who said your mind was like a garbage can that has to be emptied or even filled? And don't fill my mind. It's not your garbage can. Don't fill my mind with all your difficulties. Use your own mind and your own common sense and your own direction. Be independent. So the first chapter, the first section, the first kanda of Patanjali Yoga Sutras will be to define this is what yoga is and this is what the practice looks like. And it is not the result that you're looking for. The restraining occurs by inserting something, creating a wave called a vritti into the mind stuff called chitta, compared to something like a lake. This chitta, misunderstood sometimes as consciousness and yet derived from the same root, is compared to a lake. Imagine a lake with many, many waves in it. The goal is to see the bottom. That is elucidated in the fourth section and the last section. Then the second section of it is to tell you not only how to raise up a counter wave, create a counter habit. That's all contained in the first section. Second section. So first section is to describe this is what it is. Second section is to describe what is the practice. Third section is to describe what are the potential results in being a scientific work. Everything is mentioned. This is called various powers or siddhis. And it is only mentioned because it's a work of science. It's not mentioned to take seriously. Because if you have siddhis and don't have wisdom, then you may as well join the circus. Swami Vivekananda has two great examples about this. Sri Ramakrishna, I should say, has two great examples of this. Two brothers meet. One has become a yogi and dedicated years and years and years to meditation. The other one is a normal householder living a good life. Brother, what have you learnt over all these years? Oh, watch. See this body of water, this great river? I'll show you what I can do. He gets up, he meditates a little bit, chants a few mantras and crosses the water, walking on it. Like Jesus. And the brother looks astonished, no doubt, pays a few rupees in the example, and goes across by a boatman. When he reaches the other side, he says, brother, you spent all these years learning how to cross the river. I just paid a few rupees and did it. What worth is this? So if you don't have the wisdom, you'll be a circus performer. That's all. You'll have an ego that says, look at what I can do, see what I can display. And for this reason, Sri Ramakrishna eschewed all these powers, all these siddhis. Of course, he had the wisdom to use them. And there's no doubt that he retained spontaneously some of them. So, fourth chapter is to do with Kaivalya. That is your mountain, discovering your mountain. The rest of it before that is telling you there is a mountain. This is its height. This is its structure. These are the difficulties. This is now how you climb it. This is the pathway you take. And as you take it up, you may gather some things on the way. But the goal is always to be at the top. Every man aspires toward this goal of perfection, to be at the top. People use this expression, I want to be the top of my game, top of my career. Okay. So everybody aspires toward perfection. Whether they know it in those terms or not is something that is different. And when you lose that aspiration, then you go into a state of regression in your life and depression along with it. So in terms of actual climbing, what do we learn? We learn, first of all, to overcome fears. If you want to take this path or any path, you have to put your fears aside. There's one person I mentioned, how do I overcome the fear of death? See, if I were to give you a definition, what is fear? Fear is faith in heredity, faith in your XY chromosomes either side, faith in your individuality as a human, something with a body and so on. Faith in that. As soon as you have faith in that, you have fear. Fearlessness means I understand the great unity of existence. There's nothing else which exists. I have to cultivate a learning along those lines. So you have to cultivate unity at every level. Imagine a mountain with different levels. Just like Mount Everest has base camp, you have to get there first. And then you go to another level, another level, another level, using the experience of those who have climbed before you. The reasoning section is usually regarded as part of the conscious field. And without it, there'll be no proper judgment. So that's necessary. This is one level, the level of reasoning. Nor will there be development plans or sustained efforts to make them succeed. Success is inherent in us. If we plan to succeed, success is not assured. Why is that? Because every mental movement driven toward it will be so much internal statement, I hope I don't fail, and I haven't got success. So many other important faculties also reside in me. I have to take them all out and use them systematically as tools. And one is the ability, one tool is or faculty that I have is the ability to correctly anticipate future needs and opportunities, and then take advantage of it with faith. Another capacity that I have is to become fully prepared to meet all the obstacles that I face. And these constitute a kind of refined foresight. And they become more reliable by continuous respectful reception, thankful use of them. Knowing this, we climb our mountain well equipped and with absolute faith. Anybody who endeavors to do mountain climbing will be absolutely sure of their footing. They'll do it in such a way that they will overcome all their fears, knowing that there are crevasses, knowing that there are deep ravines. But what keeps these fears at bay is we keep this goal in sight. And we know that we have all the resources necessary to do it and to overcome our fear. And as soon as we tune into a unity, fear is gone. Faith is the opposite of fear. Faith is faith in unity, understanding a united field. And then another thing we learn from mountain climbing would be that there's no endeavor worthwhile that doesn't take hard work into account. It's hard to climb a mountain, there's no doubt. We arrive breathless. We have to have various techniques to do it. It is hard on the muscles, on the legs. And if you're climbing Mount Everest, you have to be acclimatized to the altitude. And so this hard work is necessary, but the reward pays off. Imagine now you arrived at your destination and you have such a wonderful view. Is it worth it? Anybody who climbed a small hill or a mountain will say, it was worth it. It was worth it. We can recover our breath. And now, we have the view. I remember when I was down in Bantry and I had a small hernia procedure. 2 days before that, I climbed a mountain. I don't know how many kilometers, I think 3 or 4 kilometers up and down. So 3 kilometers times 2, so 6 kilometers. And it was extremely steep. Fortunately, there were stairs given, sometimes rocky, sometimes smooth. But the reward was the vista around and before us. That is the reward. The reward is found in the 4th chapter, or the 4th section of Patanjali Yoga Sutras, the Kaivalya, that area of absolute quiescence, what we might call blissful base. And then what we learn, a love for the journey itself. Don't be in a hurry to get to the destination. The journey itself is worthwhile. If we keep our eye constantly on the top, we will miss many, many beautiful scenes and opportunities. And this is the beauty about Neo-Vedanta, as we can call it. We're not saying let there be absolute non-duality and jump there. Arrive at the mountain or top of the mountain instantaneously without the joy and the experience of the journey. Most people can't do it anyway. Most people will have to go through the various stages. What are these stages? Fortunately, the twin philosophy of yoga philosophy, called Sankhya, provides us with 24 stages. 16 there at this gross level. That is 10 sense organs, 5 of information, 5 of knowledge, and the mind. And these are simply gross manifestations, crystallized waves. And these waves are 5 in number, and these are called tanmatras, subtle forces that lie beneath everything and express and combine and recombine and come out as all these things. And that is why we can take any aspect of these waves that we see and look at their subtle force behind, see their combination. And then that takes us now to another principle other than the subtle part of it. And that is the cosmic mind, the supreme knower, the thinker, and the witness, the creator. And that comes from nature itself as an umbrella term for the whole of existence. And the yoga philosophy in Patanjali follows the same procedure. There is Purusha on the one side, singular. All of us have a different one, according to Sankhya and yoga philosophy. But they're generous enough to put the whole of all these categories into one thing called nature, Prakriti. Prakriti, the thing that is rough, the thing that is unrefined. It's not supposed to be smooth. Don't complain, oh, life is difficult. Yes, it's meant to be difficult. It's like climbing a mountain. Learn the lesson and learn to love the journey, because the journey is manifested divine glory presented to us. So we appreciate that. And then the next lesson we can learn will be to take roads that are less traveled. Don't look for the easy route. When you take a new route, a different route, there's a certain discovery that you have. A new thing, a new discovery, something new, a new vista perhaps, or a new twist, a new turn. Some new knowledge comes to you and it creates an internal thrill. And so take the road that is less traveled, not the road that is normally traveled. There's a book or a series of books, The Road Less Traveled. It's a whole course that many churches, for example, the Church of Ireland, for example, might take such courses, conduct such courses. Take the adventure. Next, you cannot climb a mountain unless you are prepared. So prepare. In that same way, we prepare for life. This preparation process is called yoga, concentration, in its various forms. Concentration is the key to everything. Concentration is the key to making your day successful. There are many techniques to help with this. Today, it is natural for our attention to be scattered all over the place because there are so many interests and sub-interests that catch our attention. And then if we're not careful, we'll respond and react to things immediately. It requires planning. In this same way, meditation requires planning, like structuring a runway and then taking a flight above the clouds or climbing the mountain. If you climb a mountain, you have to be prepared. You have to have maybe 2-3 years of training. Same thing with life, same thing with yoga. And then leave the irrelevant things behind. When you climb a mountain, you climb it with the least equipment possible. Simple living, high thinking. Sometimes the trend is different. Sometimes it's complex thinking or complex living or simple thinking and complex living. High thinking, simple living. Take all the things that you don't need, leave them behind, the irrelevant things. So when you examine what is going on in the mind at any moment in time, you may find the mind occupied with extremely trivial things that seem out of proportion. When you look at them, they seem to give you an enormous amount of difficulty, stress, mental problems, thinking of them time and time again, trying to work them out, find a problem-solving technique. The mind itself is a problem solver. We leave it purely to the mind. Don't think that the mind is an independent entity. It is the divine mind that is there. And the problems it presents, we'll always find a matching solution somewhere when we let go and allow this to work through us. So take along the minimum. There's a principle in feng shui. If you haven't used it in 6 months, get rid of it. Make sure everything is clean. Make sure everything is simple. And then admire the silence. There's a certain stillness and silence when we view the mountain, and a certain stillness and silence when we endeavor to climb. And when we're at the top, there's definitely a silence which is there. Some awesomeness is there, some sense of wonder that takes the breath away. And then another thing that we can learn is to respect every small thing, every small hardship that we encounter, to understand that it has its own beauty. In the story of the Avadhuta, one of the teachers was a spider. Some things that people have a fear of. Python, nobody wants a python. A python is seen to be a dangerous animal. A snake, a cobra is seen to be dangerous, and so on. We avoid these things. The secret and key to successful living is to walk toward those things and see the great value in them, appreciate the great value in them. Behind it is the divine. We have to have an eye to see behind, and then we understand how magnificent the operation is. When you go to zoos, you see that there are different animals presented, or sometimes there are institutes that present varieties of snakes and spiders and so on. And when you see these close up, the wonderful technology that went into it, as it were, the organic technology, the mechanisms of moving, and the intelligence behind the food-catching mechanism that every organic creature has. So when we climb our mountain, we can learn to love and respect every aspect of the journey. And finally, of course, when we arrive at the top, we respect the whole overall totality. And then don't ever give up. If you're climbing a mountain, climb the whole way. Don't pause. When I climb steps, I don't climb them step by step. I try to run up them. I try to move up them, experiencing the movement of the physical body and also the joy of the breath and the joy of the ascent, the motion. And even if you feel that your breath or that your lungs are being seared apart, even so, don't give up. Keep on, keep on, keep on. Sri Ramakrishna has the great story of the woodsman who goes to the forest and he hears a voice around. And he says, go further into this forest, an area he has never explored before. And when he dares to go further, there he finds the forest of sandalwood, much more present than the previous wood he was cutting. And he takes that, and still the inner urge, go further, go into more unexplored territory and see what is there. And eventually he discovers silver mine, gold mine, and diamond mine, and so on, all these things, becomes rich. And people measure their success by that. But the point of the story is not about wealth. The point of the story is there is unexplored territory. People spend so much energy, so much investment, so much research time into finding the depths of the ocean and finding the extent of space. Supposing that energy now was to be internalized, to find the depth of your own being, yourself at depth. Very few people do it. Very few people know anything about their own physiology. They say, leave it to the doctor. It's his specialty to know these things. But your own body, you should surely understand it. If you're traveling in a car, you should also surely find out, how does a combustion engine work? And what are the moving parts? And if it goes wrong, I have a clear kind of diagnosis. I won't just take it to a mechanic. A mechanic can tell me any kind of thing. So I have to surely, out of pure interest, know a little bit about my own physiology. I'm living with it day in, day out. And then what about the mind? I should know every corner of the mind. Why do things arise in it? Why do emotions arise in it? Why do I feel happy one moment, sad the next? Can I blame it on external things or my own reactions? When psychology came with Freud, from there on, instead of looking outside, a new dimension was opened up for us to explore the psychology of the mind. Of course, this is not new. The Sankhya psychologists had done it before. Kapila understood it. The whole of Raja Yoga is exploring the geography, the faculties, the behavior of what is collectively called antakarana, an internal instrument. So, don't ever give up. Persist. Have determination. Have dedication. You owe everything to nature is another thing that we can learn. Finally, there's nothing that we have of our own. In climbing a mountain, we categorize the whole thing as nature, forgetting that we ourselves are also part of nature. And breathing is taken care of for us. We don't have to spend extra effort in pumping the lungs, moving the diaphragm, our muscle up and down, pumping the heart with an external means. Generally speaking, the cells get repaired. If I cut it small, make a small cut on my hand, immediately the defense forces are mobilized into action and internally disinfected, and healing starts. All of these take place without my asking and without my knowledge. I only see the effects of it. We're running around, as I always say, on canned sunshine. It doesn't belong to us. A particular reverence for the sun. We get everything from the sun. The sun is a life giver. So we can appreciate everything and owe everything to nature as such. The Raja Yoga will tell us about our potential divinity. When I first took up the study with this devotee, instead of reading the text as the person had wanted to do, I draw their attention time and time again to Swami Vivekananda's profound statement derived from this book. And this Raja Yoga is a foundation book for the study of the science of religion. But you know the famous statement that each soul is potentially divine. And if we take this step by step and break it down, we have the essence of everything. And the analogy of the mountain becomes clear to us. Each soul is potentially divine. This is worthy of profound reflection. I never get tired of quoting this because we rattle it off through rote learning, and the more we do that, the less we insert meaning into it. Each soul, what does that mean? Does it mean human souls? No. Every being is potentially divine. Not just every human being. Every being, even a bee, is potentially divine. Even a mosquito is potentially divine. Even a worm is potentially divine. Even a tree is potentially divine. We can substitute the word soul with spirit. There's a spirit within everything. Each soul is potentially divine. I quoted this in Zimbabwe to somebody and they said, "Oh, you mean each soul is divine?" No. If it was, job is finished. You have nothing more to learn. There's a potentiality that needs to unfold. It is there within you. It needs to come out. At the moment, you don't know it. People glibly say, and there's a warning that goes with this: "Oh, I am God." Advaita declares it. Advaita Vedanta tells me, "I am God." No, who told you this? That creates unnecessary pride. It creates egoism. It creates body consciousness, because you cannot help but identify yourself with the body. Intrinsically so. The problem is our sense of embodiment. So, no, each soul is potentially divine, awaiting for unfoldment, patiently, Mother Nature patiently waiting. And how can we evoke it? How can we unfold it and uncoil it? The goal is to manifest this divinity within. That's our goal. That's our top of the mountain. To manifest this divinity from within is already there. The top of the mountain is already there. It doesn't have to be invented. It doesn't have to be born. We don't have to wait for its arrival. It's there waiting for us. So the goal is to manifest this divinity. Manifesting it from within, it's already sitting there. How do we do this? We do this by controlling nature, the whole of nature, not just one small part of it. But you see, once we've understood one small part of it, we've done the whole thing. If you want to understand nature, there's no point in collecting samples from the region of Pluto or the external part of the solar system or where it unites with that beyond. It is these voyagers that have gone to the edge of the solar system and shaken nicely with a certain galactic wind. And there the vastness of the galaxy is there. Some I don't know, something like 40 billion from our galaxy, from our Earth point of view, 40 billion light years across. Imagine now. And to get to the center of it, let's say 20 to 30 billion light years to get to the center of it. This is the whole of nature. If we are to control this sample here, which is man, we have controlled the whole of it. This is the secret of the yogis. The yogis can control all of nature because they've controlled their own unit. And it's divided into external and internal. The external universe we're quite familiar with, the universe of the waking world, the senses. And all our activity is related to the waking world. All our memories are related to the waking world and replayed in dream, no doubt. And internal, the mind. And once you have controlled the mind, you've controlled all the external things. Once you've controlled the external things, you can control the whole totality of nature. As Swami Vivekananda is very careful to point out that prana, once the yogi controls prana, the yogi has controlled prana totally throughout the whole universe, the whole energy, the whole energetic system. It's not a miracle. It's a question of controlling one small aspect. You control the whole thing because it's a unity and a totality. Then the method. Yes, we're familiar with this. Do this by using every faculty of the mind. That is selfless service, selfless work, worship, love of God, psychic control, meditation, concentration, or a philosophical outlook that is practical enough to make a distinction between the unreal and the real. Philosophy. One or more or all of these and be free. Be free because we are free already, but this discovery of our own nature, this manifestation of the divinity within, gives us this point of view of freedom. And Swami Vivekananda is saying, giving us alternatives. But it's quite clear that he's saying, in this day and age, we should use all of them. Work-life balance is what we call it. Then this is simply the whole of everything, the whole of religion. But what is religion? Realization, Swami Vivekananda defines it as. Not a set of doctrines or dogmas. So to clarify it, he says, doctrines or dogmas or rituals or books or temples or forms are but secondary details. This is from his commentary on the Yoga Sutras, the second part of it, or the second chapter, and the 23rd sutra. Just a word about sutras. Sutra, the English word suture, or, that surgeons use to sew you up. That is derived from the same thing. Sutra is a bare minimum, bare thread. It's a wonderful technique for learning. What we discuss, for example, suppose we discuss time management and we say time is money, exactly, T-I-M-E. And we discuss everything that is in terms of budgeting time and planning time and so on and so forth. Just as we would do with money, a wise person would do this. Then whatever our discussion is, if we simply use the phrase, time is money, exactly, then the student will know everything we discussed. They'll recall everything. And then in a typical technique, Patanjali has laid out the sutras. This is what I'm going to say. Then this is what I'm saying. And then summarizes it eventually with the ultimate conclusion, leading us gradually up the mountain from where we stand. Each person will have to climb their own individual way. Each person will have their individual starting point. It's useful to know, what is my starting point? This is why we do the Enneagram. The Enneagram tells us, this is your starting point. Then this is your direction. Don't worry about the other person's direction. They have a different path up the mountain. Concentrate on your own path. When you've arrived at the top, you'll see all the paths because you'll have your total view. And so we start off from where we are with our accumulation of habits and tendencies and behaviors. And knowing this, we're able to just talk. This is where I am now. And then from there, we are able to construct a path with all the characteristics that we have learned from the mountain. We'll review them again. What are they? Overcoming fears, hard work or effort, love for the journey, taking the minimum, not taking the irrelevant stuff, being prepared, fully prepared through training, taking roads that are less traveled, being more adventurous, admiring the silence and enjoying it, respecting every small thing on the way, being thankful for the journey, the process, and all the experiences around it. And don't ever give up. Always be persistent. Be determined. Go on, go on, go on. Don't stop until the goal is reached. Uttishta jagrata prapyavaran nivodata. Rise awake. Don't stop until the goal is reached, even though it is like walking on the edge of a razor. And then discover your potential divinity represented, of course, in the analogy by the very top of the mountain. So you may view mountains differently now, and you may view every other part of nature differently, and you may learn lessons as the Avadhuta learned from 24 gurus. So with these few words, I leave you with that wonderful reflection really on mountains that can be used in meditation. And if you happen to see mountains, as no doubt you have in the past, or you may in the future, pause a little while and climb the mountain itself with all these joyful aspects, with a sense of wonder, adoration, and thankfulness. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace beyond all. Thanks.
Thank you, Swami.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Merci beaucoup, Swami.
Om